All right, so we'll start with the same opening. Yeah, 30 seconds. Well, no one's followed that. Who are you? Why are you running?
I'm Alex. Hi.
Oh, a little less loud.
There we go. I'm Alex Rikleen. I'm running for U.S. Senate because I think that Democrats in Washington have been playing it safe. I think that their strategy has been far too heavily focused on waiting and hoping that we win more seats in the next election or the election after that, instead of prioritizing the actions they can take to mitigate harm today. And I think that's dangerous. I think that runs contrary to what historical recommendations recommend for an opposition party. And I want them to change that.
All right. Mr. Rikleen, do you consider yourself progressive, and how do you define progressive?
Sure. I tend to think that labels like progressive, liberal, etc. often add more confusion to conversations because so many people have different definitions of them. Whatever definition of progressive you're going with, you're probably going to fit me into that. I think I had one no on the survey. The politicians who I'm most likely to agree with are Maxwell Frost, Alexandra Ocasio-Cortez, Jim McGovern, Senator Markey. When you look at the themes of the progressive movement of the 1900s and the ideals that they were fighting for, those are the same ideals I think we should still be fighting for. But I prefer my personal philosophy of those kinds of labels is I try to avoid them when I can.
Well, about another label then. So a recent buzzword in politics has been affordability. What does that mean to you? And what would be your top priorities in making a more affordable Massachusetts and country for all?
Sure, I think when you look at the data, the things that are most driving that are housing costs and healthcare costs. And so our focus really has to be on addressing those two core issues. When you remove healthcare and housing, everything else tracks much closer to inflation. Inflation is still a problem. We should absolutely repeal the Trump's tariffs and take other steps. But we got to address the biggest drivers. And the biggest drivers are housing and healthcare. We need to be working towards a single-payer system, preferably Medicare for all. And we need to be building more housing. Just more housing.
Thank you. We can share here. Central to any discussion of affordability is universal childcare, especially in a mixed delivery system model that can achieve flexibility and cultural competence. Parents experience high-cost family childcare educators often lack stability, and this is a largely women of color educator workforce that often faces insufficient wages. So beyond tax subsidies for families, what direct federal funding would you support to stabilize and sustain home-based family childcare educators?
Sure, I think that we should be taking steps to try to level the child care funding towards teacher funding, and also should be increasing teacher funding. I think that we should be, all the policies that were named in the survey. Again, I was supporting all of them because I was the primary caregiver for my kid for a couple of years because I experienced this personally. We looked at the costs of childcare and we understood that it was more financially stable for my family if I actually only worked part-time than if we put our kids in full-time childcare. But this is affecting all of our families. We have to take as many of these actions as we can.
Thank you.
Time check?
14.
Oh, okay, great.
Plenty.
We have plenty of time. So I'm gonna go ahead and do both of them. So every day we wake up to new stories about the very uses of ICE, ICE agents, ICE detention centers across the country. Do you support the goal of abolishing ICE, and if so, what does that mean to you in practice? No, why not?
Sure. Unlike the two speakers who you've seen already today, I was calling to abolish ICE before this week. That's the reality, is while Representative Moulton was voting for a resolution to express gratitude for ICE, I was calling to abolish ICE. On Monday, Senator Markey was on CNN and asked 3 or 4 times in a row, do you support abolishing ICE? And he couldn't give a straight answer. I'm glad he's gotten to the point where later in the week, now today, he is clearly and affirmatively calling to abolish ICE. But that is where we should have been. We need people who can be leading on this before, 21 days after Renee Good's death, before 2 or 4 days after Alexandra Pretty's death. This is something that has been obvious to most of the people in this room for months. And yeah, I've been calling for this for a long time.
Thank you, Mr. Rikleen. So this question, so you have never held elected office before or held a prominent role in advocacy in the state. So why did you decide to make U.S. Senate your first office running, and why should people trust you when you have no record?
Because the Senate is where members of Congress have the most tools available to them to be pushing back against this administration. And so the Senate is where I think that current Democratic failure is most acute. And I felt that this was a message that we needed, that frankly, many of the people in this room probably signed on to the April letter of last year to our congressional delegation calling for forcing quorum calls, denying unanimous consent, placing holds on nominations, using all of these tools available to minimize the harm that this administration is causing. The Senate just has so many more of those tools available to them. And despite grassroots Democrats around our state and around our country calling for that, our elected leaders have been ignoring it. And I felt the protests are happening, the organizing is happening. We needed to add primary challenges to the arsenal to push for this cause, and no one else is running in this race pushing that message. I had the ability to do it. Isn't one of the themes of our country that if you see a problem and you think you can solve it, go try and do that.
It's 11 minutes left.
More than 2. So Senator Warren has framed a major political question as whether politicians stand with the bigoted past or they stand with the rest of us, highlighting how that appears across issues of antitrust policy, healthcare policy, housing policy, cryptocurrency regulation, tech policy, the list goes on and on. Do you agree with her, and what steps would you advocate for in order to rein in corporate power?
Yeah. One of the things about being a senator is you don't have to have the answer to every problem. You have to know where to look for every problem. And I'm not going to come up with a better answer for addressing most of the problems that Elizabeth Warren is talking about. I'm going to look to her and say, hey, you've got a lot of great ideas for how to regulate and address especially the issues of extreme wealth inequality. How can I help you? How can we work on that together? Everything you just described, everything she talks about, she's right and she's pushing the right buttons. So yeah, let's support that. She's completely right on all of that.
Mr. Rikleen, so you are here seeking our endorsement and endorsements of others. So tell us today, why should we endorse you in this race? And what make you like different and a lead candidate to this year? Thank you.
I think that, there are three candidates in this race. Two of them politically and ideologically represent the values of this room. And one of them is a part of the establishment. Of those two, one of them is a part of the establishment, has been there, has been a part of and supported the Democratic leadership that a lot of us are frustrated with. And one of us is calling for change in our Democratic leadership, to more forceful use of democratic tools, to more forceful pushback, to listening to the largest sustained protest movement in American history, and more forcefully calling for their demands and respecting their demands and listening to them and heeding them and trying to motivate them instead of sideline them. I'm the candidate who's doing that. And I think that, I'm the candidate who both aligns with your values and your goals, and I hope that you'll agree.
Mr. Rikleen. Thank you so much.